Hello, everyone. This is your boy Abdul, and we're on our fourth season of our program. This is us. With me, our usual panelists, Nana and Jude. Hello,
Hi guys.
guys.
Hi Abdul.
Life has been
Uh,
lifing.
I know. Yep.
let's not waste too much time. Firstly, let's talk about pastors. Um, please don't get me started. We've had issues in terms of pastors riding jets. For me, I see them as professional hustlers, businessmen. What do you guys think?
Pastors. Nana's just come from church. Nana, go. Tell us about
Why
pastors.
am I going first?
You just came back from church because I didn't go church
You're
today.
jumping me into it, Jude.
Yeah.
Please now. You already know. Do you
Pastors,
know
I
what?
think I
Yeah?
think I think
Like
pastors are humans.
like I
Go.
said, like everything that human beings do, there are going to
Mm.
be crooks, aren't there? Like just like in every profession. So you've got you have some crooked ones, and I don't want to paint, let's say, all pastors, but there are some good ones out there. I think for me, I think what it is that because of how materialistic Christians have become, they gravitate towards a certain sort of certain sort of pastors and certain sort of churches. And that's just, we have to kind of accept that we enable the behavior as Christians because we go to certain churches, because we like that feel. People want to go to churches who are meeting in 5-star hotels, nice chair. And at the end of the day, in order to maintain that, where's the money going to come from? This is honestly me. Sometimes I sit back and I've started to think that, as Christians, we do enable certain things. And we also have to take responsibility. I don't think even though I'm not saying that the pastors are not scamming, some of them are scamming. Because at the end of the day, they're scamming and they're able to scam because they've realized that the people that follow them or their flocks are also very weak-minded. And it's a shame that you're in a position of power and you shouldn't take advantage of your members. But the bottom line is human beings are inherently selfish. Once they see that there's something that they can exploit, that's exactly what they're going to do, regardless of whatever title that they have. They're humans just as you and I. So they have the same challenges. That's my take.
You're spot on. Spot on. Very spot on.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head by saying they're humans like you and I.
Yeah.
But how come most of our people see them as their God? They've created too much powers for these religious leaders, and they see themselves as the next big thing that without them, you can't breathe, you can't function. And I think that's the major problem we have and why so many people worship them. I find it intriguing when you find some people kneeling down, prostrating to fellow human beings just because they're religious leaders. And most of them come back to tell us they have superior powers that can make them see the future. But I just think that's why I say they're professional hustlers to me, because like you said, if given that opportunity, people will misuse it. And that's why we're humans.
I think Abdul, you're spot on. Nana, you're spot on as well. They're humans, they're professional hustlers. It is a profession now, and I'll say it should, as a profession, be regulated. There should be a regulatory body for these pastors, whether they be in the West or in the South or in Africa. Again, like Nana said, we're inherently selfish. We need to, first of all, understand humans and what we can do and cannot do. And also, scripture. I think these people are mostly stuck in the Old Testament, where you have one person who always led the children of Israelites out of one problem or another. The Israelites always dug themselves into some hole somewhere, and they needed a Joshua or Moses or Saul or David or Ezekiah or Ezekiel to rescue them. But when Jesus came is it called the Second Testament? The New Testament.
New
I
Testament.
don't even know my Bible.
Dude, I'm not going to church. Oh.
New Testament. Oh my God, I need to go back to church. When Jesus came in the New Testament, he did say, you no longer need that between you and your Father.
Yeah.
I've come to break all of that barrier. I'm not saying it the way he said it, but I think that's the impression. You no longer need any of that. You now have God within you. You serve God within. So there's no longer that intercession or intercession between you and God. He's done that by paving the way and paying the sacrifice. But these dudes, as it's talk in the Old Testament, the only reason for that is what Nana touched on. We're inherently selfish, and we always shift the blame focus. And these guys who call themselves pastors today, once they see that in you that, okay, this person is weak, I can exploit this avenue, why won't they do it? Nana also touched on something very important, and this is what I tell people. It's as simple as that. I'm in this place now. Obviously, this place I'm recording from was paid for. Imagine if I had to do this every week to pay for this place, or I asked the management to pay for this place every week. Then we'll have to have an avenue to get money to pay for this, right?
Yeah.
Our program right now is subscription free. We might say, you know what? Let's start monetizing. Let's ask people to pay £1 per view so that we can meet your demands, Juju. That's exactly what it is. So these guys, they've come from being that local hustler, and now they're driving big cars. So you have to keep up that level. You can't go from that to that. And to keep up to that level, you have to start lying. Your integrity goes straight in the bin. It's a fact, because they're living beyond their means, and they have to keep that up. Because if as members of church, if they see their pastor today on a private jet and tomorrow is walking on the street, they'll walk away from that church. So they need to keep that facade. Hence, that whole story or that whole scam business continues as a cycle until the end.
And even, I always say this, even look at the way that people treat like pastors. Like for instance, like I know that depending on the type of church that people go to, the same people that you've grown up with, and you see how their level of commitment changes once they like move to a church which is much bigger and there's a more congregation and like they're meeting in nicer places, their commitment changes. So to a certain extent, and all of a sudden, right, when you're in, I always say that you can always see the difference in how, like, in people's behavior. When you're in a small church, whereby it's quite small, it's intimate, you know that everybody like chips in and does things. The commitment is not the same. People are not that committed. You'll be forcing people to come and help you arrange chairs. But flip the script when you're in a big church, where you're in a huge auditorium, where you know that my pastor has private jets, my pastor has this. Come and see commitment. The same people, their level of commitment is completely different. Yeah. And I don't think we can sit here and ignore the fact that as Christians we are materialistic, and unfortunately we are moved by things. And that's what I've come to. That's what I've seen. And so you just have to sit back and accept it, that although these people are scheming, they're also scheming because they've also realized that once I have this big church, I have this going, people respect me more. And they do more of what I say. Because when it's a safe person in a small, like who's doing, nobody's checking for your pastor will say this. You be like, oh, if I can, I'll do it. But let some huge pastor tell you go around, you pack your bag.
You're spot on. You've touched on the star status of these guys. Yeah. My manager last week, we were driving to a visit, and she said, have you ever had people question whether you're a professional? Because of the way I look and the way I dress, because I don't go to work wearing a white sleeve and a chinos. The way I dress, you think I was only going to the park. I'll wear chinos, I'll wear trainers, I'll wear t-shirts. And I am a professional. I go into people's homes like that because I want to be able, if a patient is on the floor, I should be able to sit on the floor with you. I don't want to start looking, oh my God, I'm wearing a Gucci suit and this person wants me to sit on the floor with them. So I want to put myself on the level. And that's exactly what you said. I've had people question me, even from our own community. Black people say, who is this guy? They don't listen to me until somebody points to them that he is a social worker. And they be like, all of a sudden, newfound respect and level for me. Like just a moment ago, they were looking at my beard. He's unkempt, he's that. And I like those things. And that's exactly what you said with the pastors. If those pastors have 3 members, nobody wants to come back there. They just say, there's nothing happening. God doesn't work there. That's why he's where he is. He might be telling them truth. But once you have the one with the big members, and they drive big cars there, and you have all the fraudsters and everybody there. Exactly. Nobody feels guilty. People think, oh, there's something happening here. I want to be part of that. Mm-hmm. And the pastor has to keep that facade. He has to keep keeping up with the Joneses. Otherwise, so
Yeah,
it works both ways. They feed off each other.
This is why, what's it called? I think there's some sociologists that did some research into Pentecostal churches, and they always say that it's almost like we're in a religious marketplace where people are picking and choosing what they like. So churches are in competition with each other. So essentially, they're in competition. They're being run like businesses because you have consumers at the moment. So we as church members, we're consumers. So we're there and we're literally picking which church is going to offer me more an effective service, which is why there's just so much pump and people are going to church and it's not really like to have an encounter with Christ. It's just for the show.
Yeah.
And it's the
truth. So pretty much now, the world we live in now is a world of fashion, a world of facade. There's nothing genuine about the way religion is practiced. And well, sorry I'm actually not a Christian, but I think this goes along with other religions as well. But I think there's more into it with the way pastors have actually been preaching now. So for me now, the way the whole world is, it's all about, living a lie. And there's a friend of mine who I've known for over 30 years. And initially, when he started telling me about going into the way our grandparents, our forefathers were practicing before the advent of Christianity or Muslim, which is idol worship, he just made me understand that, for instance, if we all decide to go the way of the Shango, the Obatala way of worshiping, that's a lot better than the way we are being led now, because everything is all a lie. And by the time he brings his argument, I tend to, kind of believe the way he's. And I think it's worked for quite a number of people. More people are actually moving towards that traditional way of religious beliefs now. I have a friend of mine, we actually went to the same primary school. He's actually a medical doctor, but I think he's one of the Oluawos in Shogbo there. And there was an interview that he did, and he actually came out and said, yeah, he is a medical doctor, but at times he said he wears two caps, and that he will tell you, the medical aspect of what's wrong with you, but he will also tell you that, okay, this is the way it is. You might as well go into this other method. And he said he's going to wear his cap and tell you, and then he's going to charge you for that. So I think quite a number of people are realizing that. I think we should start getting back into the traditional way our forebears, were practicing religion before the advent of Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or any of these religions that is now getting us confused all over the world now. So I think for me personally, I think we should be looking into that now, with the fact that a lot of these individuals.
For me though, the danger in that is we then have one extremism replacing another extremism. So for me, I don't like replacing things with things. You know what I mean? So if you look at the Afro-Americans in America, then they were born into that Christian faith through the slavery and all. And when generations like those of Malcolm X came on board and Stokely Carmichael and the others, they switched from Christianity to Islam. And they were still very, very extreme with their views. And most African Americans today, they move from one to the other. I say, come on, man. You can't move from being a Christian to being a Muslim. You should just become yourself. Use natural or whatever you call it, traditional, back to our traditional basis. I just think it's back to being human. That's what they're doing. But because we need to articulate what we're saying, we need to use terminologies. I just think it's going back to the basics, being human. But when they came to us, we were living just like that. We could have just gone out, pray when the rain came, pray when the sunshine came. That was it until Christianity came. Christianity has its own side. They have their own good sides. They have their own bad sides of the history from Europe.
Like any other religion.
Come again?
I said, just like with any other religion.
Exactly. But when it changed in Africa was when prosperity preaching jumped in, and that came from America again.
That came from yes.
The flamboyant side of things, and Nigerians just grabbed it very quick and spread the whole thing across Africa. That's where the problem came. Now they're telling people, and they got a ready populace for it. They got a very fertile ground to preach those sort of things.
Of course, when you're preaching and think about it, right? Because initially, if we look at, I always say like the history of in terms of like Christianity and everything else, and I'm just going to focus more recently, like in like I don't know the 20th and the 21st century. I'm not going back to like Wesley and all of that stuff. If we're looking at like the more recent phenomenon across the continent, it started off initially with like it was a purity movement. Initially, it was all about being pure. Remember, that's when people were not watching TV. They were not doing it. It was very much focused on setting yourself apart. And then we see the rise of neoliberalism across like the West. And then what you then see is then the prosperity preaching started coming. And then of course, come on, we are struggling in our continent in Africa. It's a fertile ground for prosperity. Because you tell people who are suffering that, yo, don't worry about it. Your riches are in heaven. Yeah. And honestly, this is when I always say Karl Marx's idea of like religion being an opium for the people, because there's a promise of you getting all these riches in your afterlife. So of course, there's no way prosperity preaching was not going to succeed on the continent because the people were struggling. Yeah. And it was almost like hope. Somebody's giving you hope. When you're even thinking about, of course, it's just something to hang on to, which is why people find it shocking that it's always, when you go on the continent, it's seemingly people that don't have much, but they're able to give it away, right? And they don't even bat an eyelid. Why? Because they know that they've been told, almost like if you give this, it will be multiplied. It's investment, honestly. And when you sit down, all the language that's used, I remember there's like a couple of sociologists who were saying that it's almost like it's an investment scheme, because people are being like, you're being told that you invest this much and you get tenfold. But what are you investing in? Even though there's nothing tangible, right? But you have this belief and you know that this is going to work, and you have nothing else to rely on. So of course you're gonna stake your chances, because it cannot get worse than it already is. So you might as well, if somebody's giving you this hook, you would take it.
Yeah, and it goes back to why I said they need to be regulated. If they were regulated at all in places like Nigeria, I'm telling you, it would have been DOA dead on arrival. Because
if you know, I mean, I don't want to mention the church, but of course there's this church which has been very controversial. It's been in the news and everything else.
Spark Nation, no?
Hey, Jude, listen, I don't want to mention.
I have to mention
well, we just have to mention it, though.
At the end of the day, it's what it is.
And that, like, initially when it started, I remember, like, everybody was like, oh, yeah, they're doing such fantastic work. They had all the young people flocking to it. And once again, what then happens is there's a whole, I feel like every day there's a new revelation. I remember the first time when revelation started coming out of young people being talked about being sexually abused. And I was like, okay. And then it just spiraled. And every single time there's been like something new and something coming out. And I think more recently, was it last week as well? Yeah. The charity commissioner and the thing shut down the church for money and for fraud. But one thing I will say is, even with everything, all the controversy that's happening around that church and everything else, people are still flocking. All they have to do is change their name and set up under a new, and people are still flocking. Church is still happening. I don't want to name the pastor, but the pastor is always on social media and people are still like bigging him up. And he's like, so for me, sometimes I'm like, even though we know all of these things, people are still going to these churches and they're not seeing anything wrong with them. So I'm just like, I don't know what it is, but once again, also on the flip side, I also know how that church operated in terms of like the reason why it specifically targeted young people from vulnerable homes.
Exactly, I was going to use that term, yeah.
Who didn't have like good like parental support, which is why they were able to exploit them so easily. So once again, it's like, how do you then, what do we put in place in those instances for these checks and balances? Because typically in those cases where you have young people, it's the parents that will step in and be like, absolutely not, you're not doing this, you're not moving into some church house, you're not doing this. But when that isn't there, like, who what checks and balances can be put in place?
There are no checks and balances. The people should have become their own checks and balances. But like you rightly said, vulnerability. When you're bastardized already, when you're hopeless already, you're in a very vulnerable position. And me and you know, if you take advantage of vulnerable people, how the law can really hammer you here. Because at that place, you are at your lowest.
Of course.
And there's different stages of life where people can be vulnerable. It's whether you're getting married, whether you're out of a divorce, or you're falling in love, you're falling out of love, you're ill with mental health, you're broke, you can't pay your bills, you're homeless. These are the different times where you could become very vulnerable. And if I decide to, by virtue of my work, I know places where young girls are being kept or treated for their vulnerabilities and ill mental health and also. Yeah. If I decide not to go hang around there, and I know these young girls hang around there, and I said to them, I can give you weed, I can give you money, come home with me. I'm only playing on the vulnerability.
Yeah.
And they know that, okay, he's driving a nice car, he's got access to weed, he's got access to alcohol. They'll follow me because this is what they want. They're straight by butter. So it's the same with the pastors. Going back to what Abdul said, they're professional hustlers. The high time we know, but we're talking about the people that are so hoodwinked, people that are so bastardized. It's very difficult to drag them out. You know, if you go into these churches with the mindset of questioning things, then it's a different ballgame. But if you go in there at your lowest, I've spoken to a friend before who said God virtually gave him food physically when he was hungry. And that's full stop. You can't have that conversation more than that. I'm like, how was that possible? Did he just drop eba for you or fufu? Did God make the fufu and drop it? The guy said, I don't know how God did it. He gave me food. And people believe these stories because, again, they are hungry. Why wouldn't I believe that if I'm hungry? I would believe. But now I'm in a society where I'm not hungry. I know if I'm hungry, I will just order Uber or go get McDonald's. I won't be believing stories like that. But if I'm in a vulnerable state where I'm homeless, that's why the government protects those sort of people at their lowest state when you go take advantage of them. So I think they need to be regulated a lot. They need to be really proper disciplined, arrested, locked up, because what they're doing to majority of people is criminal. It is criminal. They're taking advantage of our people, and it's not fair.
Yes, I mean, I always say the charity commissioner in the UK always steps in. Sometimes,
but it takes time.
It takes a lot, but that's I know it takes time. But if you think about it, right? They need to gather the evidence.
Yeah, I know.
Because even though already, like I said, that particular church, very controversial. They were in the news. They were doing this. They were doing that. There was always something new, like from the people that used to attend that church. And it's only literally, I think, was it last week? I think it was around last week. I read the publication by the charity commissioner to essentially close down the church, essentially for fraud. I think they were not able to account for 1.8 million pounds or so that had gone through the church or something. And I was sitting there thinking, we all knew this, like a lot, because like I said, once again, if you're young, you're active on social media, you could see all the vulnerable young people that were coming out saying, I went to the church, I got exploited, this happened, they told me to take out a loan of this amount, they told me to do this, they told me to do that. And you're like, wow, this is wild. How is this just happening and continue? And how are they joining all these young people with like material things? Their pastors head to toe.
No. You know about women's problem when they go complain about rape.
Sorry?
So you know about when women say they've complained to the police about rape, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does the police do when they know that this woman who's come up before them to report rape has a history of drug use? What do they do? That's she's lying. Of
course, they brush it off.
So that's exactly what it is. When these vulnerable people come out with their stories and say, this pastor did this to me, this pastor asked me to go remortgage or go get loans and credit cards on my names. I've actually sat down with people who redeemed church in Camberwell, because I'm not afraid to say it, asked to go remortgage. And they came to me and were like, how do we do that? I'm like, it's your business. But what I'm trying to say is when these people come out, what these pastors do is one thing. They discredit them. Oh, don't mind them. They use drug. I brought them out from homelessness. I brought them out from drug use. And that process of discrediting you paints a picture before the others to say, oh, Judy's a liar. This pastor helped him when he was at his lowest. He was using drugs, and now he wants to pay back with lies. So that's what they don't see. They don't see the behind the scenes. But these guys understand how power works with vulnerable people. So they use it. Yeah, they understand the dynamics of power, so they use it in those relationships. So that's what it is.
It is exploitation. It is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
honestly, I think the bottom line is for some, because I always say this, even in the last, I remember, like, yeah, it's great. Like they say there's an appster, but even think about it. Sometimes you meet people, and it's like once people's career fails, their backup plan is to be a pastor, and you're like, yeah, but is this something? Do you have a calling? Is it something that you want to do? But for a lot of people, no, it's the easiest way to make money.
It is. You won't believe it today. I actually thought this morning of setting up a church as well, and I wanted to call it a church. Just call it church. That's what I wanted to call it, and I was going to target Black men of my age and younger, maybe between 30s, who live a different kind of lifestyle, like on the fast lane and all. And I was thinking about it for a while, not just because of this show. I was thinking about it. I said, it could work, because we have the Silver Pulse guys, and we're doing that already. And people like that already. And we're getting feedback. And I could set up a church, call it church, where guys come after service, we share some shots of whiskey and cigars. I said, I might catch people, I said, maybe the first 5 services don't ask for tithe and offering. Maybe the 10th time they come, start asking for tithe and offering. Before you know, I'll blow it. I'll be driving Ferrari around London, So I thought about it today, this morning.
You know what? Like you're not the first person I've heard say this. I had one of my friends was like, sure, we're gonna start church. No, I said, get out. He told us
just know that when you set up your church, please, just put me in the leaders board or the treasury department.
Yeah. No problem.
I'll definitely do a good job in
But once again, I think is that sort of mentality is mainly for people that because the person that proposed, they live in Ghana, and they were like, church business is booming. And he was honestly, I think he was actually being serious. He was like, do you not think we could actually do this?
Because it's interesting you mentioned Ghana. There is this guy in Ghana, the pastor that actually takes scissors and be shaving up the pubic hair from women in his church. Oh, you've not seen it?
Yeah.
In Ghana, it's a popular guy. It's always on social media. Virtually, women will come out. They take their panties off, and it's shaving their pubic hair, putting it in some plates. And one other time was taking their pants from them, doing whatever. And these women were very well dressed, so they weren't like people who were not well-to-do in society. These women were properly dressed like they were professionals. They looked like lawyers and all. But this pastor, who's probably never been to primary school, was doing that to them.
But do you know what it is? And whenever I see that, right, I always say it, like especially with like a lot of these dodgy pastors, it's just it's exploitation. When they realize that there's something that they can exploit. And we all know that, especially like within our community, when a lot of women reach a certain age and they're not married, like, and you have all the pressures from your family, they become vulnerable.
Exactly.
And that's when they'll go and be doing all this stuff. And I'm like, baby girl, if you know your Bible, you know that you've been called to Christ. Marriage is no guarantee. Your walk with Christ is no guarantee that you get married. Just accept it. If it happens, it happens. Does not happen, it doesn't happen. Because once people realize that you're desperate for something, they exploit it.
It's interesting what you just mentioned about the Ghanaian pastor. And I always wonder if truly there is these pastors, these religious leaders actually use juju, or is it that people are actually brainwashed to just follow this? Because I couldn't imagine it when I saw it myself, when the pastor was pretty much shaving off their pubic hair. And
it's a combination of both.
Stand there and just one man is doing that. And we've seen so many videos, so many stories of, people, some pastors matching on people, stepping on them, telling them to take their panties off. So I still fathom that. Is it that they've been brainwashed, or people just don't understand? Because just like you said, some of them are not just ignorant. They are actually well-dressed looking people. And you wonder why they have this kind of thinking.
I think Nana kind of answered that question. Now, we come from a society where stigma is always heavy on the female. Now, a guy who just goes around sleep with different women, they call him a player. A woman who does the same is called a whore. Now, a guy who's in his 40s or 50s, not even have a child, nobody accuses him in our society. But a lady, once she starts approaching 27, her mother will be the first person to start saying, "You know, go bring husband for me."
Me, I'm 28 every time. When are we wearing kids? When are we wearing this?
Exactly. And the woman look at herself and say, "What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong?" And she speaks to one or two people. And the persons she spoke to about this whole issue, one of them will be like, "You know what? When I went to see that pastor and he prayed for me, after 6 months is when I met Jerry." And sometimes it's just coincidental. But because that lady has just said that, and now this woman is being pressured by people at home, pressured by society, looked down upon, like, "Oh, you're not nobody, you're not married." Her friends have stopped talking to her. Now she's contemplating so many things. She's vulnerable. She's beginning to have mental health issues. Now she'll decide, "You know what? I'll take you to go see that pastor one day." And she goes to see this pastor who's in a position of power. The pastor knows immediately that this is a vulnerable woman. And he wants to take advantage. Like, "You know what, madam, you know, the truth is this, your friend didn't tell you. What your friend didn't say is this. I will have to sleep with you once or twice, and you will have children." And she will give in, or you will meet your future husband. And they do give in. There were videos too going around from some pastors in Africa who were in the church. There were husbands, there were boys there, there were men there, sleeping, virtually sleeping with different women, just for them to have husbands in the church. And you ask yourself, whether it's Juju? No, Jesus said, "You perish because you lack knowledge. You perish because you are stupid." There is a knowledge out there. There are books out there, not just the Bible. There are so many books out there that you can carry and read to empower yourselves. You can ask questions. But again, it's a combination of all, and society needs to change, whereby the stigma on women stops. If that doesn't stop, this will continue, because it's so embarrassing seeing my sisters or our mothers or our daughters being treated like this in front of a church. That's sexual abuse.
It is.
Sexual
And also,
abuse
I always say,
in
it's
full
funny,
public land.
if you look at the congregation, I always say most congregations, there's more women than men.
Yeah, true, absolutely true. I think women are more religious than men. Let's just put it that way.
And another thing we must not lose sight of. Please, we must not lose sight of this. And I tell people this, they think I'm too critical of our people. We are a lazy people, man. We're a very lazy bunch. And when I tell people, they think, "Oh no, we're hardworking. My father was a bricklayer." And it's not about doing hard work. I mean, we're very lazy mentally. We are lazy people. And the reason I say this is, no one wants to think for themselves. It's in our music.
There's definitely a lack of critical analysis.
Is it in music with dance to? The music our artists put out there for us to dance to is in our literature, is in our everyday speak. When I hear some people speak it, sometimes I'm like, that is so wrong. You're saying God has to change my life today from nothing. So you just want to be a pauper today and be a Bill Gates tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. There's a process you follow. You get where I'm coming from. So when you have that kind of mindset, everything na double, mortgage na double. Why would you ask for a double mortgage? If you understand what mortgage is, you don't even want to own a mortgage. Talk less of asking for two. So that mindset, everything na double, car na double. Come and live in England and have two cars. You know it's more of a problem than a blessing. But in Nigeria, where you don't pay road tax, you don't pay insurance, you want to ask everything for double. It doesn't work in sane societies. So the way we think, the way we dance, the way we sing, what we listen to, it matters a lot. It points towards these pastors now capturing your people's minds and say, "Come here, then you will get your double this." No, it doesn't work that way. So we need to start be able to critically analyze people, not just jump in. Because when you start talking about these lyrics, they insult you, they say you're jealous. No. Nothing comes from nothing. You need to put something in for something to come out. It's fact.
But I think we have gotten to a point where it's almost as if like you cannot, not that you cannot criticize, but you know when something is wrong. I think the whole point of being Christians is that you're supposed to be able to hold each other account, regardless of your status. So whether you're a pastor, but I think there's a lack of accountability. Just because you know that this person, they're up there and everybody's just down below. So even when they're doing something that's wrong, like nobody comes out to say it. It's just accepted, and then everybody just runs with it. So I think also think
touch not my anointed. I do
Yeah.
my professional arm.
Well, guys,
So there's a level of responsibility.
I think we could go on and on and on and on,
Yeah.
and we won't leave here. But our producers already telling us that it's time. We've got to round up.
It's only warming up.
Just as we always say, this is us. We'll just have to talk about us, and until we come your way next time. This is me, Abdul, and Jude and Nana. It's a pleasure seeing you guys again.
Nice to
Thank
see
you
you.
very much. Till
Thank
next
you.
week. Have fun. Enjoy your day, guys.
Thank you.